Hey everybody, happy Saturday. Hope this all finds you well. Whoa, just a second. Sorry, forgot that one important thing. All right, so let's get started so we can get through as many as we can. I saw some good ones already. Michael Colvin, I have worked on a little Walter amp. I have no good thoughts about it. I thought it was kit build amateur at best, and what distinguishes it as a harmonica amp is just it has a cap shunting a lot of the highs and upper mids to ground and sounds kind of yucky. I would not choose a little Walter. I've had like three and they were all much the same. Look at Victoria and other Tweed style amps. That's my honest opinion. Sorry if that disappoints anyone. Michael Colvin, again, best bang for your buck amps. I have two videos up. Best amps under 500 from a text perspective, and then from 1,000 under 1,000. And I probably need to, in addition to doing the next level amps under 2,000, I probably need to do an updated version of some of the first two because things have changed and there are other options on the market, many of which are digital. But best bang for your amps, if you like grunge and rock and roll, I would need to know your budget, but I can't tell you a 100-watt Marshall reissue if you can't ever play that loud. You might be just happy with a deluxe reverb and some pedals. So, Aguas de Marco, is that right, Marco? I always get my Portuguese C's mixed up. Maybe it's Marshall. I hope you're feeling better, Vinicius. I know the dengue fever is no fun thing. Also, watch out for crocodiles and quicksand while you're living in Tarzan world there. Thank you, Rick 771612. I have not had a car Telstar in. I've had about 3 or 4 other car models in, and they have all been well built. They sound good. I think they're a little bit overbuilt in some areas. I'm not a big fan of how they do the cathode on the reverb driver of some models, and I think that they invested in whatever company makes silicone gel. They put silicone on everything, but if the Telstar falls in line with the other ones like the Mercuries, etc., I'm sure it's a very good amp. If it suits your needs, get one. Let's see. Digital sucks. All right. You got a DSL 40CR based on my recommendation. They are very good for the price. They are a good, do everything pretty well amp. There are amps with better cleans. There are amps with better overdrives. There are amps with better distortions. But in that price range, with tube, to get all those sounds, it has a range of very good sounds. Hasn't been turned on yet. Anything I should do first? The biggest thing that can happen in transit is a tube can go south. And so what I would recommend to you is turn the amp around so you're looking at the back of it and see if you can see the tubes. And I'm trying to remember how, if you have the combo, I think you can see the tubes. You may need to remove the rear panel first. Power it on using, keeping the amp in standby. Wait a minute, take it out of standby, watch the tubes. If you have something very wrong, actually, before you even power it on, look at the tubes if you can. Make sure that none of them have white ends, which would indicate that they've lost vacuum from being damaged in transit. If any of them have white frosted ends or have gone completely white, don't power it on yet. But assuming that all the tubes visually look okay and you power it on, wait a minute, nothing happens, take it out of standby, one of two things could happen at that point. It could either blow a fuse as soon as you take it out of standby, in which case you probably have a damaged output tube. If it doesn't blow a fuse out of standby, keep the master up but the channel volume's down and just listen for about 15 minutes and watch. If you start to hear a or you see all of a sudden a bright red glow on any of the power tubes, power it off immediately, because if you have a damaged tube from transit, it can cause damage within the amp. But after 15 minutes, if it's not humming and the noise level is not getting any different, or you're not seeing any dramatic red glow, play it and see what you think. Hey, Clint, I really appreciate this. It was not necessary. I saw this message in Super Chat before the chat started, and I went and I found your email, and I called you. And if it's okay, check your voicemail if you haven't heard it yet. I've had my phone off, in airplane mode since then. But I'll call you this afternoon. We'll get you taken care of. And I do apologize for being hard to get in touch with. I'm just drowning in requests. Let's see. Hey, Sonny. He's got a 73 Fender Bandmaster head with 4 out. I think the 4x10 is DeVille's got a 2 ohm load. You'd be all right with a 4 ohm 2 ohm mismatch. You're either going to have a 4 ohm or a 2 ohm load on the DeVille, and so if that's the case, then yeah, you'll be fine with a slight mismatch with the Bandmaster head. I admit that I have tested Bandmasters with 8 ohm cabs as well. Not blasting live at Leeds for an hour, but those Schumacher transformers that the old Fenders used can handle a one-off mismatch. So if it has a 4 ohm out and you give it a 2 or an 8 or a 4, it's fine. Don't give it a 16 ohm load. And you can verify what the load of your 4x10 DeVille is with a meter. It'll tell you. If it's a 4 ohm, it'll measure 3 point something. If it's an 8 ohm, it'll measure typically in the high 6 point something. Thanks, old guy. Appreciate that. Hey, Gringo Pig. Otto von Fledermaus. My back is better today. But 2 days ago, I woke up and I thought it was better, and I yawned and stretched, and all of a sudden felt like a ripping, and lots of fun. So I'm taking it easy today. Hey, Lefty Mike, taking a break from them crooked vultures to watch me. Well, the birds of Carry On will be there when you decide to carry on. Hey, Dustin. Hey, Shelby. Burns versus Alpha and CTS. Burns pots. Burns are fine. I would say Burns, in my experience, are typically more equivalent towards alphas than what CTS can be and have been. I know that Burns makes different ranges of pots, just as CTS does. In general, I don't like Maybe it's weird. I don't find that the lugs on Burns pots are as reassuringly thick as I like. They just kind of look a little bit flimsy to me. Whatever pots that PRS uses in their guitars also, I just don't like physically. But it is possible to get very good results with Burns pots. I have used the expensive Burns pots with the blue and black plastic cases in some cases for some jazz guitars where they wanted a linear taper and no noise. And those are very nice sounding pots for certain applications, but very expensive and difficult to work with. Hey, Our Life in Wyoming. I have not had time to even think beyond knowing that would sell, and I don't know if I would also have to look into whether the Fender company would shut me down, because I cannot go into a legal battle with Fender. Audio is a bit low volume, huh? Let me look at that real quick. Audio is a bit low volume. Why would that be? Should be quite good. How's that? Is that better? Huh. What's interesting to me is I have not changed my audio levels from, all the things I've set have stayed the same. Anyway, Hopefully that does the trick. I want to make sure I'm not going to peek that out. Talking, testing 1, 2, 3. Hey! Let's not clip that like that. Talking. Clip. All right, right about just over 3 o'clock on the preamp. Sorry about this, guys. Let's see, where was I? Hey, New York geology. Sartre versus Camus. Question for the English major. Well, that's a trick question for the English major. Those are both French writers. I find Camus a little strange. I find Camus, if it's possible to compare the two, a little more lighthearted and enjoyable. Sartre is a bit of a downer, but I think as far as the story aspects, Camus. Let's see. Hey, Line Circle. No, I wouldn't add X2 or Y2 capacitors as noise suppressors. I think it's overkill. I think if you've got a problem with your AC, there are better ways to fix it. But if you want to add one, as a filter, you can. But yeah, use an X-rated capacitor that can handle more than the AC voltage, which is try to get something that will handle twice the AC voltage that is present on your mains. Have I ever had an amp that I could not fix? There are some amps where I knew that the cost to repair would greatly exceed the value of the amp, and so I have advised the owners not to have me do the work. There are amps that would be extremely difficult to fix. By fix, I mean make as good as they were to begin with, at the very least, not just make it make a sound and turn on and go out the door. There are amps which frustrate me. This hand-wired AC30 here is frustrating, and I'll give you guys a quick preview of an upcoming video. So it had a lot of hum in the output, and the hum is due to at least 3 things. I knew it had a bad quad of EL84s. Turned out that the very strong tube retainers with the springs on the side had actually semi-cracked one of the EL84s. It had lost vacuum, but it looked okay. So new quad of EL84s that are matched. That brought the hum down quite a bit. Then the wires. Can you see this here? Going to the phase inverter were left way too long at the factory, and they were coming close to the wires going to the output transformer, including the HT center tap, which is tied to the first node, which has the greatest amount of ripple. It's like 35 volts of AC ripple on that first node. And so that was injecting a lot of noise into the phase inverters. So I shortened those wires and dressed them far away from here, and that lowered the hum a lot. The hum is still there, though greatly reduced, but it hums more than it should. And any guitar brought within a foot of this amp hums much more than it should just from normal transformer proximity. So I have a suspicion that the power transformer may in fact be emitting a very big radiant field, which is making things worse. It also had a bad rectifier tube, but that's neither here nor there. The other thing which is a little concerning to me, though I don't think it's the cause of any hum, is this circuit uses 2 thermistors in series to prevent any inrush current when you power the amp on. But I'm getting about a 3-volt drop across those thermistors from the incoming AC to the AC that actually feeds the primary. Oops. And I don't think that's correct. I don't think those thermistors are opening up or closing up enough. So that's another thing we'll be looking at. So there are amps like this where it was like this layer, then this layer, then this layer, and it takes a while to find all the things which all have similar symptoms. And sometimes that can be, you think it's, that amp probably needs filter caps and or tubes. It can be 8 other things all contributing to the same symptom. And that's why a lot of people, kind of, they can go nuts from amps. I've never had one that I could not fix that I set out to fix. I've had amps where I will get frustrated and I'll put it to the side and I'll work on something else and kind of wait for that eureka moment. Speaking of that eureka moment, oh, there it is. Okay. I can't see it on that monitor, but I can see it there. Okay. Here's when I have good ideas. All right, let's see. Let's see. Audio was fine before. See, that's the trouble. I need someone to read ahead for me for these things. Let's see. Hey, Fountainberg Quine. Orange drops don't need to be installed in a certain direction on a tone knob. If you're talking about for a guitar or for an amp, orange drops, like most film capacitors, have an outer foil. Not all film capacitors have an outer foil end. But in general, the best practice is to have the outer foil to the side with the lowest impedance. And that can either be ground or that can actually be B+, which is a high voltage DC, which serves, as far as impedance goes, is equivalent to ground. So there can be a benefit to observing the which end of the outer foil is connected to the lowest impedance. And Blackface, 760 AB 763 era Fenders did observe that with their outer foil placements. There are other parts of the circuit where it makes little or no difference whatsoever. In a guitar route wiring, in theory, you would want that outer foil connected to the side closest to ground. So if you're using it in a tone cap in a guitar, you'd want that tied to ground because ground is one of the options. I don't think it makes a huge difference in a guitar because the voltage is so low, the current is almost non-existent. If I had a cap where that was marked, I would do that, but I wouldn't go to the trouble of measuring an orange drop to find the outer foil when putting into a tone knob in a guitar. And I have done that on amps. It's kind of just a matter of making sure all your I's are crossed and your T's are dotted. I don't have any thoughts on the Celestion Sidewinder RCKX. The EV12L is a great speaker, but I rarely find EV12Ls where they sound like each other. There's so much variation between them when you have more than one at a time to compare that I'm not sure that they have a specific sound. They have a specific neighborhood of sound. I think, personally speaking, unless you can really select from a bunch of them and find some really great sounding ones, they're very expensive and they're very heavy, and some of them sound very nasal. So not a favorite of mine, but I understand why people do like them. Hey, Marcus, does the JTM45 circuit always have a large amount of bass, and is there anything that can be done to tame it? Well, the JTM45 circuit is derived from the Fender Bassman. That's your clue number one, and it does have more low end than a lot of Marshalls. In fact, if you look at the Marshall Super Bass, it is basically just that Bassman circuit without a bright cap and with more output. Some other differences, don't start furiously typing at me, Marshall guys, but as far as the preamp circuit, it's very similar. So yeah, you can tame it. Most guys don't need to tame the low end so much as they want to. Actually, they may think they do. What they actually want to do is emphasize the upper mids and trebles. You can do that by adding a 680 nanofarad bypass cap to V2A. You can do that by adding usually the bright cap in a JTM45 is 100 picofarad. You can go up to 220, 500 if you want a little more brightness there. You can play around with the mix resistor and treble emphasis cap there. JTM45s are all over the map between 270, 330K and 470K on the mix resistors. And so there's not I can't just say change it to a 500 picofarad or change it to a 330 picofarad. But these are the places you play around with, and you don't want to change it so much that you lose the character of what the amp is. So there's a Germino video I did, which was basically a JTM 45 homage, a really good one. And look for Germino on my channel. I think it's like making a good amp great. It wasn't making a good amp better, really. It was making a very good amp more what the owner wanted it to be without changing its true nature. Hey, Emilio. Buenas tardes to you, too. Hey, Ryan, he's got an old RCA-P amp, and when he gets a weird rattle when he turns it on. When it's on, there's a faint buzz. Can't tell what it is, but it isn't affecting the audio. The weird rattle could be glass in a tube that gets heating up if the amp's got a rectifier tube or something. That can happen. If you get a buzz, that could be a lot of things. Could be transformer doesn't have enough. Maybe the layers of the transformer need to be bolted tighter together. It may just be a lot of things. Without having your amp here, I cannot tell you more than that. Sorry. Hey, WR, I have not had the new version of the Bad Cat Black Cat come in. If your first 12x7 goes dark after 10 minutes, it's probably not the tube. It sounds to me as if that's the tube that goes out and the others don't, as if they're doing a DC heater supply for V1. So I don't think it's the tube. I imagine it's something in that DC supply is not lasting long after it gets warm. And that could be a number of things. But if it's the new version of the Bad Cat, it's a new amp, it should be under warranty. Contact Black Cat, and I'm sure they'll be able to sort you out. But based on what you give me here, it's likely that the V1 is powered by DC and that DC supply is going out. Hey, Jay Jules, Magnetones are good. I think they're way overpriced for what you get. But yeah, they're good amps. If it really does it for you, and you love the sound, and it's in your price range, it'll probably hold its market value pretty well. You know, everyone is buying into that marketing. So as long as everyone is paying too much for that amp, it's fine if you do too, I guess. Maybe that's the lesson, but they're okay. Hey, Tom Collins. Wow. You're famous. Do I build 5-watt or 10-watt amps? No, not very often. 15, 20 watts is the minimum I like, because you can turn a 15 or 20 watt amp down to the same level as a 10 watt amp. But you can also gig with a 15, 20 watt amp with drums, which is really hard to do with a 5 watt or a 10 watt in general. Hey, Robot Songs, thank you very much. Hey, I'm glad. Yeah, Swart. Someone was ragging me today in the comments like, "Do you ever give amps an A+? Every amp you have on, you say something negative about, just like, well, there you go. Swarts are great. Swarts, Friedmans, Sirs, Top Hats. I'm not stingy with praise when it's deserved." Alex G. All of the above. Do tube amps actually change in tone from day to day, or my ears just playing tricks on me? Same amp, same guitar, same settings. Yes. There's our mood. There's our worrying. If you think that something sounds different, you'll hear it differently. There's changes in electricity. Your wall voltage may be changing quite a bit over the course of a week, or even in the course of a day, and you may not be aware of that. A lot of people don't know what the wall voltage they actually have is. They say, oh, it's 120. No, it's like 108 that day because everyone's got the air conditioners on. Or it could be just that some days are more humid than others, because that changes the sound pressure. That changes the barometric pressure, including local barometric pressure, if you have a humid versus a dry room. Changes the way sound travels through the air. There are mastering studios that have everything climate controlled, must not change between 2 degrees, and they have humidity sensors, and they will actually go through the room halfway through the day with a water mister just to get whatever they have decided is the ideal humidity for best sound reproduction. Now, that extreme is not going to matter in a guitar amp, but all these things can change a little bit here and a little bit there. And if 3 of them all go in a bad direction at the same time, why does everything sound like crap today? And some days we just can't play. At least that's my experience. Hey, Clyde Broadway. He's got an early 70s Basement 50. Best way to date those, or does it really matter? Flowers and chocolates are time-honored approaches, but for the 70s Basement 50s, it doesn't really matter. You read the Transformers. The Transformers have a date code. There's going to be 3 letters, so then it's going to say 606. That means that it's a Schumacher transformer. Whatever the date after 606 is going to be the year. So if you're a 70s, if it's EIA 606 4, you know it's a 74. So that's the way you do it. And if you have you have 3 transformers on there, if you have say you had 3, 3, 4, it's still a 74. They just had 2 transformers that were made in 73 in there. Now, if it all says 74 on that may be a 75, and the transformers are just left over from the previous year. But really, there's no difference between 74 and 75 in most models, so that's a pretty good way to go by. You can also get in there and date the pots. You can date the speakers, whatever original component has the latest date on it, including the stamp on the chassis, a lot of times. But it doesn't really matter. What matters in a 70s Bassman is the head cab construction, because the later ones got bad. Whether the silver panel is the earlier kind where all the pot nuts sit on top of the panel, or if most of them are in little circular openings, and the amount of wax on the board. So 73 and later, the wax got thicker and thicker. Early 73 and earlier, the wax was much, much less. Let's see. Hey, Travis H. I don't have any experience with high-tone high-watt clones. Reeves, I would not describe as a high-watt clone. Reeves is one of the guys behind high-watt. I imagine that those are pretty damn good. I've seen photos of them, but I have not used them. And not all modern high-watts that say high-watts actually are high-watts. They just say high-watt and have the cosmetics. Thank you, Michael Colvin. I appreciate that. Let's see. Hey, Daniel Crescenzo. He's got a TB18C1. It's a fantastic sounding app. Okay. I have not seen a TB18C1. I'll look that up later. Sorry. Noah Greer, how does one go about learning how to build and service amps? Is it apprenticeship kind of thing? For some people, they would need an apprenticeship. Some of us just dive in and learn to do it. Just know that you're going to make tons of mistakes, and whatever you do at first is unlikely to work or work well or be anything that you'll be proud of later. As always, learn to build pedals before learning to build amps. It's a much less expensive proposition. You're much less likely to kill yourself. You're much less likely to catch things on fire, and you're most likely to succeed in your earlier efforts. So I've discussed this at length in other live streams. So I would suggest you look at almost every other live stream, at least every other one. Someone asked me that question. I know maybe I need to do a dedicated video just on that topic, but I don't know if I'm really qualified because I learn things differently than other people, and I can't tell people to go and learn how to do it the way that I've done it. It's one of those things. Hey Clyde, you found a 91 Baseman 5F6 for $500 worth it. The 91 Baseman reissue is a very good amp if it's in good condition. If the thing is structurally sound and has the original transformers and hopefully the original speakers, yeah, $500 is great. If it's not too much amp for you, a Baseman is loud. Hey, Curtis Everett. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with any amp where you power it off and the standby light takes a while to fade out. Some standbys are done with an LED or neon bulb that's tied to the mains power, in which case they'll turn off as soon as you power off the amp. Some are done with the heater supply, but at the same time, as soon as you turn off the power, those lights will turn off. But others are done off a DC node, which is tied to a filter cap. And even when the AC power is turned off, there is still DC present in that filter cap, and it takes a while to drain down, and that's what you're experiencing. So that crate must be deriving its pilot light supply from a filtered node. And so it's like a battery that has to run down. Nothing to worry about. Hey, Jatuka. Yeah, you're absolutely right about tube rectifiers and all that, but people want to see what was there in vintage stuff. And so it's a matter of amp company A does everything right, just like you decide, and then spends so much time trying to educate the potential customers as to why they're right. Meanwhile, amp company B just slaps a rectifier tube in there with all the known problems, and they get more sales. So that's why there are more amp company Bs than amp company As. How do I test a super reverb vibrato channel Roach? Greatly reduced volume of panel 2 comes right back with yeah. Well, if the vibrato out to the PI input wire is disconnected, you either have a bad Roach or you have a bad pot. Pots are easy to measure. If the pot measures fine, then you know the problem's in the Roach. You can also measure the Roach being an issue if the Roach stays at ground at the pot connection. That's pretty easy to verify. But that's about as much troubleshooting as I would give the Roach. The LDRs don't last forever. Hey, Rob French, thank you very much. Surge98 just finished recapping his Classic 50, and you upgrade the screen grids to 1K. Make sure you leave a little air gap beneath those screen grids and the board. There's one other thing on the Classic 50, and I can't tell you the part number, but I think it's between two of the filter cap stages, they have two very small resistors in series. And I think that they call them half watts, but they look like quarter watts. They're very tiny. I've had those burn up a lot. I would replace those. Vishay has some very small 1 watt resistors that fit in that same space, or you could use a 2 watt in place of those two. So if you have one here and then one here, you go out of the input hole of one into the return hole of the other and just bypass the pads in the middle. I found that those I've found them burned in many, and I found them discolored in a lot. So that's an area to look at. But without the schematic in front of you right now, I can't tell you more than that. But if this is the board in front of you, and I'm looking at it from my perspective, I look at it from your perspective. So here's the board in front of you. It's right about here. There'll be some filter caps, and nestled almost between them, there'll be two tiny resistors right about there, from your perspective. Hey, David Treaser. Yeah, they'll be effective. They're just really almost impossible to fit into an ES. You know, an old Gibson archtop that's that thick, you have a lot of room because you can play there. When you have an ES series that's that thick, it's really hard to get an additional piece of metal in there. It'd just be very, very difficult to do. You know, not everything can be shielded. It's a trade-off with the 335. My SG is shielded. My Les Paul was shielded. All my Fenders are shielded. But, you know, 335 is what it is. And, you know, there are trade-offs with everything. Someone could probably do it, That someone is not me, because I would need 18. I think it would take someone with surgical training and a surgeon's tools and a machine that could see through the wood to be able to do it. Maybe they could do it endoscopically, but I don't think any of us could afford the copay. Hey, Daniel Nesselrode, expat in France. That's great. Ampeg Jet 2 reissue of the trim circuit. Okay, so it's 2000s. I don't know what speakers in there, so I don't know what is in there now. I don't know if it takes a 12-inch or a 10-inch. I have a lot of speaker demonstration videos on the channel. In general, the things that on my channel that might have been demoed with a Fender would work well with your Ampeg as well. But I would have to know what sounds you're going for and what format speaker it is before I could give you better advice or more specific advice. Let's see. Yeah. All right. Hey, Ryan, you've got a 61 Fender Super. I'm going to change out for Super Reverb. That same output transformer. As far as I know, the 61 Super and the 63 and later Super Reverb use the same output transformer. But yeah. Oh wait, yeah, 4 ohms. Yeah, they didn't. They did not. What you have with a 68 is okay. It's not optimal. And given that you have a 61 Super Reverb, 61 Super, go ahead and find a good replacement. You might be able to find an original, find a Habor or Mercury. Yeah, you want to have that as close to possible as you can. Sorry about playing with the audio just because one guy said I wasn't loud enough, which was surprising to me because I had not touched these settings in months, and I've listened on playback, and I've never had a problem with the audio levels, but I thought maybe something had changed. I should have waited to see what more people said. Hey, Robert. Yeah, 65 reissue Fenders are better than 68 reissues. An actual 68 Deluxe Reverb is better than... Oh, wait, are you talking about reissues? You're not talking about reissues, you're talking about the real ones. As far as the real 60s Fenders go, no. 65 is better than a 68. But as far as the real Fenders go, a real 68 is better than a 65 reissue. But as far as the reissues go, the 65 reissue is better than the 68 reissue. I hope that makes sense. Hey, Guitar Man. Question about pots on a vintage bass. It had 1 meg pots for volume and treble. The volume and tone that are bad, 1 meg, 250K. I don't know what pickups you have. So if it's a Fender, you would have had 250K for volume and tone. If it's a Fender Jazz, you might have had something different depending on whether it's a blend or not. Jazz, you'd probably be better with 1 megs or 500K. But I don't know what pickups you have or how it's wired. Just volume and tone, that's usually a P-bass thing. It sounds like a single pickup instrument, but I need to know what pickup it is. Sorry. In general, you want audio for volume and audio for tone. If you have linear for tone, all your tone change happens between 0 and 1, and it's kind of useless. Hey, Gary. Yeah, it's just I was wondering if I could elaborate on the use of mounting a cap on a bias pot to help reduce rum. Not rum. No one wants to reduce rum. To reduce hum. Just a second. The weather keeps changing and all the pollen's in the air, so I get the sniffles. So yeah, you're just adding an additional filter stage. You can see that in the 70s Fenders where they added an additional filter stage to the bias, by which I mean that there's an additional resistor and then another filter cap, which was actually an improvement in that sense over the 60s circuit, which only had the 1 cap. though they made some other changes in the 70s that weren't as useful or as globally useful, I'll say. So just adding that additional filtering by going from the wiper of the bias pot to ground can remove that last bit of hum out of most Fenders that some of them have. Let's see. Thanks, American. I appreciate that very much. I would avoid any of the new Supros. They're just so poorly built, and they look great and they can sound good for a while, but they're not going to last. And when they die, they tend to catch on fire. They're just built irresponsibly. They make every tech I know mad when they look inside them, because it's just like, oh, they chose the dumbest possible way to do this. And then they market it like it's some vintage mojo. I'd almost rather have a Blues Junior. I have bedroom usage. I personally, I'll be talking about this maybe. I'm gonna be on. I'm gonna be a guest on 2 channels in the upcoming future that I'm very much looking forward to. And I think both channels are going to want to ask me about questions like this. And one of the things I'm going to say is, amplifiers traditionally were there just for amplification, to be loud enough so that your bit of wood with wire on it could be heard when you move your fingers and there's a drummer playing and a piano player. And so there was that level of amplification that got to there that you're audible. And then all of a sudden, Hendrix and Zeppelin and Van Halen and stacks of 100-watt Marshalls, and everything's so loud and screaming distortion. But then that was way beyond the needs of amplification. That became amplification and signal manipulation. And now we're back to where you can have signal manipulation, because we have master volumes and such, and only the necessary amount of amplification that's required. But we need to decide, are we using this for amplification or for signal generation, for signal manipulation? And in a bedroom, you don't need any amplification. That goes out the window. So I view it as, for things that generate and modify the signal that also amplify, I want to have 15, 20 watts, maybe 12 at the least for Princeton, so that I can use it as an amplifier to be heard with drums. If I'm just looking for signal generation and manipulation, I don't necessarily need the amplifier, especially for people in a small apartment. And that's where the HX Stomp, even the little new Stomp Go thing, or just plugging straight into an interface and calling up some plugins on your laptop, can actually be better. And just listen through headphones, because if I want to sound like, I don't know, whether it's Dokken or playing along with later Rush or Pink Floyd with gain and delay and stuff without anyone hearing, I'm going to get better results with some good quality headphones and modeling. And I hear it, no one else does. I'm signal generating, I'm signal manipulating, but I'm not amplifying. And then I practice like that, and then I plug into an actual amplifier for gigs, and my chops are there. There are nuances to it as far as learning how to practice with an amp and all, but they're becoming distinct roles. And I don't think that any 5-watt, 1-watt amp is going to give you what you're really looking for if you're going for anything that's beyond clean to semi-dirty or kind of pawn shoppy. So, very long answer to a simple question. Yeah, Matt Fields is saying much the same about the Super Reverb and output transformer and the Super output transformers I was. But I think it'd be worth seeking out the original. Hey, Seth B., my back's much better. I'm sorry your mom's is bad. Yeah, I'm not sure the ER would do anything other than, depending on what's wrong with her. If she has a slipped disc or something, sure. If she's lucky, they might give her a steroid shot, but in general, they'll just say, stay off your feet for a few days and take 2 of these $500 aspirin. For those of you who are watching this from outside of America, you can go to the doctor and not have to take out a second mortgage. We have to, even with insurance here, we have to go to the doctor as little as possible and never take the aspirin they offer you in the hospital because they will bill you for it. Hey, I don't know, Luke, if a beginner can do it. I would not learn how to solder inside an amp of any sort, even a fairly simple change like I described on the Princeton driver socket wiring. Learn on pedals. Learn by making guitar cables. If you can sit down and make a good functional guitar cable in 10 minutes with no bad solder joints, nothing breaks, and you know what you're doing, and you get your technique down, then you can do what I show on those videos. But it's not something just to try because you saw it on the video and you went out and bought a 20-watt soldering iron, because bad things will happen. Hey, Tristan. Yeah, if you have a bad speaker cable, it's going to give you a bad / inconsistent / non-existent. Damn. That's what happens when I use my wife's creamer by mistake. Non-existent load, which is bad on your output tubes, and it can cause an amp to overheat, and bad things happen. So always make sure your speaker cable is high quality and good and reliable. And high quality does not mean they have to go get solid silver soldered stuff. That's for suckers. Don't overpay. Just use good quality stuff. See the speaker connection video I put up the other day? That was 18 gauge because it was in a combo, and because it was in a combo and not going to be laying on the floor or stepped on or had cymbals strapped on it. It had a pretty good rubber jacket over each conductor. If I were doing a cable to go from a head to a cabinet, I would use 18 gauge, and I'd use something with a heavier, thicker jacket just for protection. But and with good Neutrik Switchcraft Amphenol connectors, and make sure everything is in good shape. Maybe once a month, if you're gigging out a lot, measure them, flex them, listen, make sure that everything's cool, because one bad $20 cable can cause $100+ of damage to an amp. Hey, Rob, what temperature do I use for soldering on PC boards, and what's my technique for not lifting pads? Any insight here would be helpful. It depends on what solder was used on the PC board. In general, PC boards are lead-free. So I want to work pretty hot. I'll turn it up to 750 on the iron. And say that this is the solder board, and I'm talking about through-hole stuff, not surface mount stuff. Surface mount's entirely different things with quick chip paste and heat guns as much as soldering. But let's see if I can show this. Or let's say that these are the two legs of a resistor lead going through a board. You'll often find that those legs on the other side are bent at an angle underneath the board. And if you just try to pull the resistor up out of the board, those legs are going to just rip those pads on the bottom. So what I'll do is I'll apply a little bit of solder or a little bit of flux, but typically just a little bit of fresh solder to the bottom existing joints, just to add a little bit of flux so I know it's going to want to flow. And then up top, I will usually snip the lead of the resistor or the cap, if possible, right where it joins the body of that component. And one end gets lifted up, so I have the resistor or cap, and then its lead going to the board. The other one's just the lead going to the board. I'll straighten that up. Then from the bottom of the board, I'll heat them up one at a time, and once they're hot, I'll push the component through, which brings that L section, that bent over hook, down away from the board. I can snip that off, and then usually I can pull the one that's straight up top out, and the one that still has the component mounted, I can just pull that out, and then I'll use typically good braid. You can see the braid I use in the video descriptions to remove the old solder, working quickly. And then when I resolder, I usually resolder with leaded solder because I trust it more for longevity. and I will do that at 700 degrees. So I'm not overheating anything. I've shown this in some other videos, but I can't point you to them specifically. I use D5 and F5. I've not tried CRC. If anyone else has any opinions on that, that's fine. I find that F5 and D5 work very well for me, as long as I can get them in the old dispenser where I can control the flow, not the fireman's hose that they were trying to push on us for a long time. Larry, I don't know. You'd have to ask Mark. There are a lot of things in the decisions made in the matchlesses that I just don't understand. Hey, PF, I'm glad the ground scheme is working well for you. You're probably okay with a 47 picofarad generic SM. You can put it in there, but Antique Electronics, which is also tubesandmore.com, sells a good silver mica labeled as a Sozo. I think it comes in that value. You'd be fine with that. For the better silver micas, I tend to go, and ceramics, I tend to go to Mauser and DigiKey, which are hard for most casual buyers to navigate. And since you're going to pay $8 in shipping for a $1 per cap, if that's all you're ordering from Mauser anyway, go ahead and get the Sozo labeled 47 picofarad from Antiques and More, tubesandmore.com. Be fine. It's a little bit overpriced for that, but it balances out with the shipping. But you can wait. That the SM labeled one might be fine in that position across the plates in 47 picofarad. I'm not trying to say you must spend money. Just if it starts to sound weird or buzzy, that's something to look out for. Let's see. Hey, Michael Davis, I cannot answer that question for you because I don't know what pickups, I don't know the wiring, I don't know the pots, etc. It could be a bad volume pot, though. It could be. It could also be a bad ground within the guitar, but I'd have to have your guitar with me, in front of me to fix that, or show you how to fix that, sorry. Yeah, and Matt's saying the same thing. Background. Okay, hey Roman, the .22 caps in a super bass. Those are smoothing caps between the HT secondaries and the HT center tap. They're there to smooth the AC before it's rectified. In general, they don't do a hell of a lot, but they serve the same role as a snubber cap. A snubber cap is what you'd find in an amp where you have a little cap, typically a 10 nanofarad, across each diode in a rectifier. And so you have four resistors making your bridge, and then you'd have four caps. It can be, or even you can double that up. You can have more than that. You can end up with a lot of little parts. Marshall is trying to just use two caps to serve the same function. They don't have to be big film caps. If anything that can handle, 220 nanofarad that can handle the highest amount of AC that's present there. So like probably looking at 300 something per side in a super bass. You could use a ceramic. You could use don't use electrolytic. You could use a ceramic or a film. Do not use a tantalum there. Hey, George Glowacki. I do not know any techs in the DC area. Sorry. Hey, Rob. If your dark micro hybrid is, I guess if it only has 112AX7, change it out and see if the hum goes away. That's there's only one thing in there that looks like a nail, so hammer it. I don't know. I have not looked at the dark micro circuit. So if it only has 112AX7, try another one. Hey, Mark N. My back is better today. Thank you. What would we consider overfiltering of B plus in an SE amp? Well, unless if you have a tube rectifier, you don't want to have more filtering, more capacitance on that rectifier than it was designed for. See the rectifier tube data sheet for the Max and observe that. Now, if it says 30 and you've got a 47, you'll be okay. But if it says 30, don't put 100 microfarads there. Beyond that, it's to taste, whatever you like the sound of, really. But I'm not a big fan of single-ended amps. Hey, Brian Carpenter, Coke, Cock. I've seen all kinds of pronunciations. They're good. They sound really good. Overall, they're very well built. If one floats your boat, go for it. I think they're more expensive in the States than they are in Europe, but I think they're a good option. They kind of remind me, in some ways, with the push-pull stuff, of Rivera. So I don't necessarily agree as a player with all their push-pull choices, but as a tech, I have nothing to say negative about them. Let's see. Michael Colvin, my used app picks for around 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. It doesn't matter if I don't know what genres you're playing. I'm sorry, Michael. I don't want to tell you a Princeton reverb if you play death metal, and I certainly don't want to tell you an Uberschall if you're a jazz guy. So I need more information than just price. Hey, Jeff. I enjoyed your two most recent pentatonic lessons very much today. I watched I watched today's video today. I watched the previous video previously. I enjoyed them very much. And I noticed you got a maple neck strat, and I thought you were Captain Rosewood. So, spill the deets, man. Spill the deets. Hey, Alex G. This sounds good. This sounds bad. Well, that's the thing. I was talking to Keith Williams about this, or I was trying to. I was talking, typing to Keith Williams on his streams. Though I do. Hey, Angus, I do speak to Keith whenever possible because he's a charming young man. That's the difference. It's difficult because we live in a world where everyone has an opinion and everyone's opinion is equally valuable, right? And my opinion about certain things is equally as valuable and equally as nonsensical as anyone else's. Like, if I tell you this ravioli sucks, you don't know whether the ravioli sucks or if I only ever ate Chef Boyardee in my life. If I had some really bad ravioli the other night. It tasted actually kind of like it was on the Chef Boyardee spectrum. The manager of the restaurant was not charmed when I said that. But you don't know what my opinion about ravioli is. If I say this movie was terrible, you may love it. So there are opinions, in which case I don't elevate my opinion above anyone else's. I mean, actually, I do. I'm right. Sorry to the rest of you. But when I express opinions about guitar amp design and longevity, et cetera, because of the way language works, it's almost impossible not to present them parallel to an opinion, but what information goes into forming that opinion? Well, my opinion is informed by a large sample size. My opinion is informed by understanding Ohm's law and heat dissipation. My opinion is based on having played hundreds of vintage Fender amps and probably hundreds of vintage Marshalls at this point, certainly hundreds of vintage Voxes, and dozens of vintage other things, and many, many more really high-end, more current production amps than the average player gets to experience. And so when any amp comes in, I try to view it as a device made to serve a role. How well does it serve that role? What are the downsides? How long is it likely to continue to? So I don't care if it's a 50s 5E3. I don't care if it's a Two-Rock. And I don't care if it's a PV Bandit. And I don't care if it's a Vox AC15 Custom. I don't care about how I'm supposed to feel about it. I care about how does it meet those roles. And so it's easy for the things I say about amps to be dismissed as just another opinion. I was talking to Keith. It's just like, well, I think some opinions are more valuable than others, and that's not a very nice thing to say these days. But my opinion about amps, Dave Friedman's opinion about amps, are more important or more informed than most. I would not. I think if you're arguing with David Barber about slew rate, you might want to sit on your hands for a little bit. If you want to argue with Jeff here about how to use pentatonics out, he might have a little more insight than most of us. There are specialties that take years and years and years of working on, and we get to a point. But at the same time, I can't say that this amp is objectively really good, therefore you should love it. Because there are amps out there that are objectively terrible that we all love, or objectively problematic that we still seek out because we're humans. We're weird naked apes. And at that point, I think this is a time to take the first 7-minute intermission because my teeth are floating. So all us naked apes can go and grab something from the fridge or whatever we need to do. And I will see you guys in 7 minutes. All right, let's get back to it a little bit early. Any issues with a PVVB3 base head? Die Cutting Solutions Incorporated asks. I'm unfamiliar with that model, so I cannot tell you if there are any issues. Thank you, Louis Delalo. Bonjour to you as well. Bonjour aussi. À toi. If I butchered that, I apologize. Je suis désolé. I think you're going to be happy with the twin sister. But, anything in that price range, play it first. Be sure. There are other good things in that price range, and Dave would tell you that as well. Maybe a different Freeman applies suits you better. Maybe a Sir Badger. But you cannot go wrong with any of them. Just one of them will be more right for you. What do I think about using a thermistor in the filament line? I don't think it'd be any benefit to it. It just would be one more thing, Jason, that could fail. If you need to extend your tube life, there'd be a slight benefit in not having inrush current when you first power it on, but I don't think it would really matter that much. Who recaps a PV? I do. Almost every tech in the world recaps PVs. They need to be replaced after a certain amount of time. Electrolytic caps have a finite lifespan. And PVs, if you don't recap them, they have a finite lifespan. If you recap them and the pots don't fail because they have those weird spider mount pots, a lot of them, PVs can last like a Fender does. Let's see. And people are talking about PV caps. If you change the AC cord, but it's still 2-wire, well then change the AC cable to a 3-wire. Have it a modern safety code, grounded power cable installed. All that will happen is you cannot electrocute yourself, and your noise floor will go down because the chassis will be shielding better. Until then, Robin R., use your meter when you plug the damn thing in, and if you measure from the chassis using the AC setting on your meter from the chassis to a ground tab in an outlet or a power strip, and if you measure like 2 volts, you're fine. If you measure 120 volts, flip the polarity switch, the ground switch on the back of the amp. But the real answer is put a 3-conductor safety cable in there. There's no downside, and you'll have a 64 vibroverb that sounds like a 64 vibroverb that you can enjoy rather than your estate can sell. Hey there, Alex. Dulcet tone low. Hey, Robert, I'm going to be getting back on the hunt for faceplates. I need to get that amp out there for people. I really want to. Rum it up. Let's see. Hey, Rick, 771612. He's got a Carlsboro 50 top from 1970. Wall voltage is around 230, 235. Amp has stitch for 225 or 250 volts. Which one should I use? I'm safe using the 250 volts. The amp's going to run cool, running the 250 volt setting, hotter, running the 225. The answer is to measure your heater supply. Pins 2 and 7 on an octal tube socket, or from 4 to 9 or 5 to 9 on a preamp socket, and see which one gets you within the 6 to 6.5 volts AC range. That's the heater supply range that you want to have. If you set the amp to 225 and your heater supply is at 6.8, that's not enough. If you go to the 250 setting, your heater supply is like 5.86. It's on the low side, but okay. And either way, you may need to have the amp biased for that. But better to have the amp running a little bit cooler with the 250 setting than too hot with the 225 setting. Hey Blake, I don't keep up with amp kits in general, but I imagine that Mojotone and Tube Depot would be the ways to go. Shane Ianson, could you not just mic up a 5-watt amp and play live? Yeah, you can mic it up. How are you going to hear it on stage, though? Are you traveling with your own sound system and sound guy? Yeah, you can. In which case, you've just spent, $10,000 to $20,000 plus however much you're paying the sound guy a year to make sure you can hear your 5-watt amp on stage. For most people who aren't touring with their own PA and their own sound guy, the sound guy can also be a sound gal. Probably be a better sound gal because they won't think that they're always right. Then it's nice to have something where acoustically it is viable on stage next to an acoustic drummer, and 15, 20 watts is usually the starting point of that. For certain players, 12 watts is fine, especially if you're playing jazz and the drummer's using brushes and stuff. Hey, Big Sale, I've got quite a few on that desert island. I hope I've got a really long extension cord so I can use them. But, a really good sounding AC30. I love 5E3 Deluxe. I love a 5F6A Bassman. I also like the low power Tweed Twin. Vibrolux Reverb and Deluxe Reverb and Super Reverb are my favorite of the classic Fenders. I really like, and Dave Friedman and I disagree on this. I was just talking before the break about how our opinions on certain people's opinions on some things transcend the subjective. We still have our subjective room for disagreement. I like a 50-watt Marshall with a 36380 B plus. He thinks that sounds mushy. He likes something with a higher B plus. We're both right. That's where, within the realm of the good, you get into subjective preferences. But he's more of he's coming more from a hard rock, heavy metal background, and I really like Alex Lifeson, and I find that the lower B plus 50-watt 2204s and even the 87s kind of get that moving pictures sound, a little bit smoother. And hopefully I have electricity and a supply of strings on that desert island. Or actually what I should say is none of them. All I want is like 100 Ovation acoustics, and I can build a raft. And I'll have a paddle. Matt Fields is using his bedroom wrong. Let's see. Hey, Matthew Arnold. Board-mounted tube sockets, it's tricky. In general, I prefer chassis-mounted tube sockets. When it comes to preamp tubes in a certain price range, there's nothing wrong with a board-mounted preamp tube socket. And then when you get into output tube sockets, it gets difficult. I think for 6L6s and 34s and such, they need to be mounted to the chassis. When you get to 6V6s and EL84s, it's preferable for them to be mounted to the chassis, but it is possible to do board-mounted ones well. The AC15 Custom and the AC30 Custom do a good version of a board-mounted EL84 socket. The Shure Ombre does a good version of a board-mounted 6V6. Friedman's got some good board-mounted octals, 6V6 and 84. There are trade-offs with each approach, and I got a lot of heat on the reviews on the Friedman and the Shure because I did not attack them because they used board-mounted output tube sockets. Whereas other amps, I did criticize it, but it's the implementation and the way the traces are done and the way the sockets are done, and whether or not heat has been designed for and accommodated. And so it is possible to do it right, like the Friedman, the Shure, and the Vox AC Custom series, with the Vox being by far the least expensive of those, versus the Blues Junior, which costs the same as the Vox Custom Series. It does it entirely the wrong way, and those boards burn all the time. So, Buddy with an H, I can't note on your in progress 6GC build unless I see them. I do like screen grid resistors, and yeah, there are differences between one triode versus two triode tremolos. I think you're probably talking about a bias wiggle versus an opto, though. So there's a little bit more to it than just the number of triodes. But I'd have to have I have to see your circuit to be able to answer specifics. Let's see. All right. It took me a second to parse out. Just solder to the good part of the L, the good tab. I'm not sure if you can. You can't. Repair solder to the broken L connect. I'm not sure. Do you mean it's broken off? I don't think you can solder on a new one and have it be useful. So, solder to the good one that remains. Hey, Gooden, if you just had a whole bunch of holes in your heart plugged and you're about to leave the hospital, if you're doing it on your own steam, then it was a good day to have your holes plugged. You stick around, man. We need to keep your wise ass sense of humor, if it ever should be on display. We look forward to the day when you're funny. Let's see. RM, I can work on leaded connections at 650 Fahrenheit on a PCB. I find it better when removing old components with lead free to go up higher, 750 for that part, and then I'll turn down when I reapply. But I don't ever need to go up to 900 to 1,000 to solder to the back of a pot. I've got a big iron that I use for chassis connections, but I wire to the pots all the time at 750 degrees Fahrenheit. Maybe it depends on the tip you're using. Kylie, I'm not sure anything special to the high power, high headroom amps. The Sound City, I forget the specifics of. The Sun Model T I'm not a big fan of. The Ampeg V4 is I believe that's got a cathode follower before the output tubes, but I have to refresh. I know the SVT does. I'd have to look at the V4 again. But yeah, there are some things from that period of design of ways of getting a louder, cleaner output section, much of which involved cathode followers, but after the phase inverter, before the actual output tubes. So you get a much bigger swing, but I'd have to have the schematics in front of me to discuss them because I'm not as familiar with those as I am with other models. I feel like I just mumbled a bunch. I'll try to slow down my speech. Let's see. Hey, Matt Smith, what should we look over when purchasing a used amp? That'd be a good video for me to do because there are a lot of things. I would look for anything where, first of all, rule out if anything in the chassis was drilled, especially on the front of a Fender or Marshall. I would look to see if all the tube sockets match each other, if all the transistors seem correct. Look at photos online of that year and model of amp and see what the originals looked like. A lot of what you really need to look at is inside the amp, and not every seller is okay with showing you that or letting you look before you buy. With any amp that you buy used, one of the first things you should do is take it to a tech and say, can you just make sure that I got what I thought I was getting? And I would typically do that kind of thing for someone for $50, unless it's a pain in the butt to open. I'll open it up and I'll say, hey, my evaluation of its current state is X. That's my diagnostic fee. I'd waive the bench fee for something like that. And that would count towards any work that I did. But, I think protecting your investment, you buy it, you have a tech verify that it was as sold, and then only buy from someone with a good return policy. Let's see. Glenn Fricker, he's that really loud guy. I'm not a high gain metal fan. I would say that speakers matter almost as much as the amp in any genre, because you want them all to be working towards the same goal. You could have a really great amp through a crappy speaker. It's going to sound like crap. You can have a really crappy amp through a really great speaker. It's going to sound like crap. You have to have them, all your stars align. And then within the realm of what is desirable, one guy's going to prefer X, the other guy's going to prefer Z. Should we invest more in speakers? I think we should think more about speakers, and I think we should try more speakers. I think you should, if you have a cab loaded with vintage 30s and you've always loved it, ask your friends what speakers they have. If one guy's got an old 5150 with PV Sheffields, another guy's got an old Marshall with greenbacks, try your amp through as many different speakers as possible and be sure that you really like what you have, as opposed to Mesa put these in here and I like Mesa, so I'm going to use whatever's in there. There's nothing wrong with the speakers Mesa uses. It's one of the few things they usually get right, but there's a big difference in sound between, say, a vintage 30 and those big 90-watt beasts that Mesa uses. I can't remember the model number. So see what you like the sound of, what you like the sound of. Let's see. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Hey, Matt Smith, I answered my similar thing on the Desert Island amps question. But there are amps that are not on my Desert Island list that sometimes I'll especially when I put a lot of work into getting them right, and then I'm sad to see them go. There's just something about that particular amp. Oh, hey, Viseri. I think parallel single-ended amps aren't more popular because they're not as loud. Single-ended amp with two 6v6s is not as loud as a push-pull with two 6v6s. They don't have inherent hum rejection, and they don't sound the same. Now, you may like their sound better, and that's fine. You're not wrong. But in general, Class A single-ended is found in budget amps and more expensive amps. Louder amps, typically more versatile amps for different playing situations, are Class A-B push-pull. The AC30, by the way, is a Class A-B push-pull, not a Class A. If that's what Glenn Fricker is saying, then Glenn Fricker agrees with me, so Glenn Fricker's a wise man. He's very loud, though. All right, Michael Colvin. Amp picks for $1,000, $1,500, and $2,000. 90s grunge and rock and roll. Now I don't know how loud you need to be, but various Friedman heads paired with a 2x12 would do an awful lot of people really happy for that. Runt 50 or Runt 20, depending on your wattage needs. The Dirty Sister or Little Sister, whatever it's called. Those are all good choices. The Sir Badger. Let's see. Germinos. You can find used Germinos in that range. That would be awesome. But then it gets into, or you could also, if you want to get into like the Pearl Jam kind of thing, you can do an awful lot of good with the JCM 800 and a couple of pedals, and you can still get JCM 800 reissues with a cab used in that price range. You're not going to be able to. If you're into the Stone Temple Pilots thing, you might be fine with a Vox AC30 custom. A lot of the Stone Temple Pilots thing has that kind of Zeppelin sound. Now, a lot of times there'll be a big washed layer thing with that, but the core sound for STP, there's nothing wrong with a good AC30. I think if you're more of an Alice in Chains guy, you might be more in the Friedman camp. Certain Friedmans, especially the Jerry Cantrell model. Those are the places I would look. All right. I'm playing catch up because I'm to the point where I went on the first intermission. Hey Alex, what model and year Vox is my favorite? Do I have one in my collection? I tend to like the 63 through 66 AC30s the best. If I were to choose one based on looks, I would choose a 65 or 66 with the gray panel and the black diamond cloth. I would be fine with Haddon, Albion, or Woden transformers. I know how to tweak each of them a little bit. I also quite love the AC15, in which case it's like a 62, which is not at all the same amp that is sold today as an AC15. The current AC15s are 15-watt versions of the AC30. But I'd say that would be, I would probably choose 65, 66 AC30 top boost normal amplifier, and maybe a handful of pedals, because hit it with a Barber gain changer or something, and you're going to have kind of the same amount of gain that the EF86 gave you from the this AC15. Hit it, going the normal channel with the treble booster. You've got all the Brian May and Rory Gallagher stuff. It's just one of the great amps, and I like the black diamond grill cloth with the gray, and the silver speaker, silver Alnicos rather than the blue. But that'd just be period. There's such a variation in what those old speakers sound like. You can't say that the blues sound better than the silvers or vice versa. This silver can sound better than this blue, and this next blue sounds better than the first silver. Just speakers are weird little things. Ooh. If you have a 68 twin reverb, I would, the best, that gets subjective. I think that it'd be very unlikely that you'd be unhappy with Mercury or Habor. You might also be fine with a Hammond. The Hammonds, it's not all their models are as good as others. Their twin transformer is quite good. Hey, all right, not quite an app question, but I heard a lot of people have been plugging in 9-volt pedals into 12-volt supplies for added headroom or clarity. Most specifically, I saw it with a carbon copy. Thoughts? This is from Rook. I had a client whose pedal board I custom wired, and he had an AC booster, and the AC booster, or was RC booster? RC booster could accept up to 18 volts DC on its supply. So I set the switch on the power supply for that one pedal to be 18 volts because it gave higher headroom and lower noise. I thought it sounded markedly better. And I told him, if you ever change this pedal, make sure that you flip that back from 18 to 9. Well, he forgot, and he changed it out for it doesn't matter. It was another high-end pedal. I forgot. Hotcake. It was a Hotcake, a Crowther Hotcake. He put the Hotcake in there, and the Hotcake died because the Hotcake takes 9 volts, and he was feeding 18. And the capacitors in that Crowther were rated for 16 volts. I was unable to fix that for him, sadly, because while I could see the caps, I could not access them to change them because they were covered in epoxy. So his mistake should have cost him about $1.50 in new electrolytics. But because Crowther had used goop epoxy, it was unchangeable. He had to get Crowther to replace the entire board. Grr, arr. So not all pedals is it safe to do that. Consult the manufacturer of the pedal you're using to find out if there's any benefit. I used to make the Telos and 3.14 and Triad pedals, and I had a specific supply in that, which took 9 volts DC coming in and turned that into a plus minus 15 volt supply. So the pedals ran internally at 30 volts off a 9 volt supply. If you were to plug that into an 18 volt supply, it would have converted it to plus minus 15 because I first dropped it down to -5, but your LEDs would have glowed louder. It would have been no benefit other than your LEDs would be a little bit too bright to use indoors because I had gotten the LED brightness so you could see it outside on a sunny day without being blinded inside. But you give it 18 volts, it'd be like little beams of light shooting up at the sky. You could read by it. So whether you damage the pedal or it's just pointless, contact the manufacturer. Always ask first. Thanks, Americon. Yeah, I put this in the description, but people don't read those. If I have question marks in front of if you put question marks in front of your questions, I can find them faster. Buenos dias, Senor Keith. Keith is in Barcelona. Please excuse him. He is in Barcelona. Good to see you, man. I'm sure you've been here for 30 minutes before I saw this, but I very much appreciate it. Let's see. I'm seeing people ask the same question several times. I will answer each question as I get to it, but when you ask it several times, I feel nagged, and I am someone who reacts poorly to that. It gets my back up. B, it means it's harder for me to find. I've had the same question 10 times, and I'm more likely to miss someone else's question. Fender phase inverter, black face versus silver face. What difference in sound gain is between 1 meg resistors and 1 sorry, I can't. I'm swimming in zeros. 1 nanofarad coupled caps versus 330K and 10 nanofarad versus 10 330K and 3 nanofarad. Well, if you do the RC filter calculation, you'll find that when you have 1 megs and 1 nanofarad, like you find in, say, a 65 Super Reverb, the high pass is at a certain frequency, below which lows are attenuated. If you change that to a 330K resistor and a 10 nanofarad cap, the ratio is different and the high pass drops quite a bit, which means you have a lot more low end going into the input of the phase inverter. And so the Silverface amps that have the 330K and 10 nanofarad become kind of woofy. It's very common concern for people to say, oh, that phase inverter sounds woofy. But if you keep the 330K resistors and change to the 3.3 nanofarad caps, then you are back to the same ratio and the same high pass frequency as you had with the AB763. It de-woofs the later fenders. As far as gain, that's impossible to, or it's not impossible. It's unimportant to say what difference the gain makes, because the ones which had the 330K and 10 nanofarad also tended to have 48K plates and matching plates. It's a different approach. They really optimize the circuit more for AT7s. And it's, in theory, the phase inverter is a unity gain thing, so you're not going to have a huge difference in gain between 1 meg, the older 1 meg setup versus the later 330K setup. You're going to have a different balance. That's so long as you're using a 12AT7, because the AB763 circuit was really designed around a 12AX, but they used an AT, which is why they later changed it to make it better for AT, but they messed up the input cap. So if you have a 72 Fender which has the 47K plates and the 330K grid leaks, but you want it to sound more like an earlier 60s Fender, just change that 10 nanofarad input cap to a 3.3 nanofarad, and then you have the same high pass frequency as the earlier amps, and all the woof goes away. And thank you very much for the kind words. Sagest Owls Reviews. Let's see. All right, if Matt's commenting here on, I guess, on Nick's Ampeg, yeah, I said earlier, I'm not familiar what speaker that Ampeg had or what he wants, but yes, the C12N is one of the great speakers, and the G12C and the M12C are exactly what Matt says. They're great versions of the old Jensen. Hey, Magisterium, how are you doing, man? Hey, Lou. Digital Sucks says, are gloves necessary to handle tubes like a flash bulb? No, not at all. People commonly comment on my videos saying, oh my God, you're touching the tubes, you're going to kill everything. That's not how vacuum tubes work at all. Everything inside the glass is unaffected by the things outside the glass, unless the thing outside the glass is a hammer. It's a vacuum. It does not care what's on the outside. Those things are designed to run, they do run at hundreds of degrees Fahrenheit, hundreds of degrees Celsius. They will burn out of you. And any oil that your skin leaves on it just gets to be hot oil and eventually burns off. It's not like a halogen where a slight temperature variation in the glass will cause it to shatter. If you have a glass that's a tube in an amp that's affected by your skin oil, that tube is on its way out anyway. It's the only reason not to touch a tube in a tube amp is because it's damn hot and will burn your fingers. So there's a lot of bad information out there. All right. Okay, you're not asking just in general. That's right. You're powering up your new Marshall. Silver shiny at the tips is normal. That means that the getter flash is present. No noise after 15 minutes. Sounds like you're ready to play. Enjoy your DSLR 40CR, DSL 40CR, and let us know what you think. I hope you're playing it while you listen. I did not know that Marshall was shipping the new ones with TAD red base. That's good. Let's see. Hugh Janus says, is there an issue with me leaving my amp on for the day? I like to reach for guitar in between calls or during breaks and working from home, bust out some quick jams. It depends on your amp, how well it was built, and how loud it is. If from what you're describing, you're probably not sitting next to a cranked AC30 or Marshall Major, so it's probably fine. Yeah, you will have a higher electricity bill, but the thing that really damages amps beyond, unless they're really pushing a lot of it expected out of them while playing, I'm talking like playing full volume second or third set of the night for an extended period of time, is the thermal cycling that happens when you power them on and power them off. That's when things get stressed from that inflow of current and the heat building up. They're pretty stable. A good amp is stable for long periods of time. When I do a lot of work on an amp, one of the last things I do is I leave it on at least 12 hours, often 24. If an amp fails during that, something's wrong, because it should be absolutely fine. Hey, Bake Sale, go to, he wants to know about literature. Start with thevalvewizard.co.uk. Merlin Blinko has a lot of really good information up on his website, and he sells fantastic books. thevalvewizard.co.uk. Buddy with an H, I don't have a preference similar too much. I think the Princeton style bias wiggle is better than the Tremolux, which does the same thing to the cathode bias of a preamp tube. But they both have the pros and cons. It's a little bit harder to get the. No, let me not say that. Each of them can be tricky to get working really well. Both of them have some negatives. Both of them can be magical. But, thumbs up for Buddy with an H. The Queen of England doesn't know her ABCs. It's a fact. Let's see here. Die cutting solutions. I still don't know anything about the PV 300 watt VB3. Sorry. You can ask a few more times. I still won't know. I'm not trying to be mean or single you out. I know I've answered this long before you typed that last one. Hey, Silverfish, you got a 72 Deluxe Reverb, you got a tremolo check. You added a cap. I don't know which cap you added. In general, addressing all the lead dress at the tube socket, V5, and at the wires going to and from the pots, plus adding a cap. Fender's Fix usually takes care of it, but Fender's Fix, there are two variations on Fender's Fix, and you can do it with a 22 nanofarad or a 10 nanofarad, and sometimes that matters and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you want to take it from, if you're looking at the amp from, it's upside down, so the board's facing you, you're looking at it with the pots away from you. The bottom left leg of the Roach, you want to put that cap either to ground, which would mean the top left connection of the Roach, or to B plus across the 10 meg resistor, which would be down towards the eyelet. And sometimes B plus gives less tick than connecting that cap to ground, and sometimes connecting that cap to ground does more for you than connecting it to the B plus. So those are the two things to try. And if you've done all those things and still have tick, get back to me. And sometimes just change the tube in V5 and all that goes away. Oh, and also make sure your RCA plug for the vibrato return is tight to the chassis and the connection is clean, because that's a ground connection. It needs to be really nice and tight. Let's see. Rook, I've not tried a ton of the Neo speakers, but I did try the Creamback Neo, the Neo Creamback that came in they call it a Pro Reverb reissue. It's not a Pro Reverb, but it's a pretty good amp. But I tried. My buddy Hal and I hooked his 65 Deluxe Reverb up both to that cabinet and the ET65 that's in his Deluxe. And while they sound different, that Neo Creamback really does sound good. But I don't think it sounded much like a Creamback to me. It was brighter, but I thought it was a really nice sound. But I've not tried many Neo speakers because I don't care about saving 3 to 5 pounds per amp. Let's see. Hey, PF. I would rarely recommend preemptively replacing optocouplers. If they work, leave them alone. The only time I would replace an optocoupler is if I had to, or if I knew that the replacement was about to be discontinued, then I'd get a bag of safeties. But at least they're not the optocouplers that Mesa uses. The Crate use better optocouplers. But the ones in Mesas and the ones in old Red Knob Twins, those are just crappy. All right, Robert McKellar says, shielding question in pedal board. Will I have a shielding issue if I use a guitar jack for input and run the jack output into the pedal chain? I have no idea what you're asking. Can you rephrase that? I'm not seeing what you're trying to describe. All right, Die Cutting Solutions Inc. Please stop asking about the PV 300 watt VB3. I don't know. This is like the 6th time you've asked it. No one has answered it, so no one else seems to have any experience with it. How many times can I say, I don't know, sir? Hey, Fred. Hey, Chris McKinney. Rebuilt the 69 Princeton Reverb. Turns it up. The signal gets fuzzy. Doesn't do that when he disconnects the reverb tank. There's a split in that circuit. V1B's plate goes through a 22 nanofarad cap. And then it splits off. One goes to a 3.3 meg resistor with a 10 nanofarad cap across it that brings the dry to the next mixing stage. And it also goes to a 500 picofarad cap to the grid of V2, which is then driving the reverb tank. And that 500 picofarad cap can fail, or V2 can fail, or at very high settings, the additional load of the reverb driver transformer is throwing something in the amp off. And that additional load of the reverb transformer goes away because if you pull V2 or don't give V2 a load. One of the fixes reverb improvements for most Princeton reverbs are to move the node that supplies power to the reverb driver transformer from the screen to the unused node between the two 18K dropping resistors. And that can give the reduce hum and clean up the behavior in the amp because the reverb driver transformer is then connected to a better filtered node. That might be the solution you need, but the first thing to do is see, all right, it cleans up when you disconnect the reverb tank. Does it clean up when you just disconnect and when you just pull V2? I imagine it would. Either of those things would be a similar cause, probably. But so it's probably not the 500 picofarad cap if it's happening with V2 present, just the load disconnected. I think you might want to try moving the connection from that goes to the driver transformer from the screen node to the unused node. Let's see. Fountainbed Quine actually it's not a 007J. It's one of the new SSK 003s. It's the blueberry, but in this light you can't see you just see hints of the blue. So if I wasn't doing the different color temperature stuff here, this thing would be popping blue at you. But thank you for noticing. I appreciate that. My guitar journey. If I were going to write a book, I would write something. I would try to do a novel or something. Amps are my day gig, and if I were going to spend the time to write something, I would want to have an escape from that. But I appreciate the thought. Let's see. Does fixed bias sound different to cathode bias? Keatons asked. Or Keat, New Zealand? Well, I'm not sure that either of your origins is going to sound authentic to a Marshall. But you got a 50 watt and you got a 20 watt fixed bias versus cathode. Does cathode origin have 6v6s? I don't remember if it's 6v6 or 84s. I imagine it's 6v6s. Yeah, the cathode's going to have a spongier feel with a slower attack. But you're also not hearing a fixed bias 20 watt versus a cathode bias 20 watt, or fixed bias 50 watt versus a cathode bias 50 watt. So you're not getting an apples to apples where the only distinction is that, because you're talking about more tubes and higher voltages in the 50 watt. But if I had to choose a Marshall, I would take the 50 over the 20. You had to choose a Marshall origin, but I would rather not have a Marshall origin. But yeah, fixed bias does sound different than cathode and feels different to play. But that amp is not a good example of either topology. And I don't mean to be mean about it. It's not you, it's Marshall. Lauren, I do not know about the Bisvain EL34s. Let's see. I would not run any 2 ohm, any amp that expects a 2 ohm output into an 8 ohm load, unless you're just doing it for very brief testing. SIR makes a fantastic reactive load, but it is a thing of science, not magic. I would not risk a 64 super reverb into a that dramatic of a mismatch. Hulk Hoagie, that's a great name. just suddenly has terrible static on the reverb of 65 Princeton reissue 12. Take out the foot switch, still loud static. Well, yeah, the foot switch is not going to do anything. When you turn off the reverb, it goes away. Well, the first thing you need to do is see if it's you probably have it on the reverb recovery tube, which I believe is V3 in that amp. You need to roll preamp tubes. You probably have a bad preamp tube in V3. You can test that pretty easily, but it's more likely to be a bad tube than anything else. So, and die cutting solutions. I'm really not trying to be mean to you. Just you asked it a lot. It was a lot. I wish I knew the answer for you. Hey, Alan Harvey. Every time you mention Stockholm, I feel like I say something stupid. Because my wife and I have a running joke, because she's from South Bend, Indiana, and she has family who lives up in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And so she grew up in the land of snow, and I cannot stand it. So she has a running joke that, anyway, it's not necessarily funny to everyone from the Netherlands. Not the Netherlands, gosh, sorry, Scandinavia. I have nothing but love and respect for you guys, and I do have Danish ancestry, apparently. We watched Fargo, though, last night, and it looked miserable. Australia, that's more my climate jam there. Hey, Mr. Big Blues fan. He's got a Fender Tweed 57 Custom Deluxe. He's happy with it. I think for the price, there are better versions of that same amp from Victoria and stuff, though that one legitimately does say Fender. But they are good. I'm not always a fan of the lead truss and the wire layout and the Fender Tweed custom stuff. But there's nothing inherently flawed with them. I think some of their switches are a bit overkill. If you like it, great. Mission accomplished. It is a very good example of what it claims to be. I just think that there are better examples from Clark and Allen and Victoria for less money, which, so. And especially in Australia, the price difference, that could really get you. I don't know if I forgot to put that one on up before I answered it. Let's see. Eric Mero says, I have a Rocket Retro version of Marshall 59. My RR100 seems to be pretty particular about hitting the headroom limit. I don't know what you mean by the headroom limit, and I have no idea what a Rocket Retro version of 59 is. A 59 has got tons of headroom. By the time a 59 runs out of headroom, I run out of ear room typically. They're very loud, and you have to turn them up pretty loud unless you're using a master or an attenuator thing. You've got to turn that thing up before it really starts to go, except for the high treble channel, which gets gnarly in the nasty ways earlier. But if you really want more headroom out of a 59, it's a trade-off. You'd have to go to like a 5751 or 12AY7 for V1, but at that point, that's not what that app's supposed to do. I would make sure that the thing is biased correctly. You might have that thing biased too hot, in which case it's just not doing what you need it to do. But I don't know what a Rocket Retro is, other than it sounds like something that Scooby-Doo would say. Walter Kurtz, two rocks are really well built. I think they might be a little bit on the expensive side for what you get, but as I said before, I don't know what their business pressures are, and people, the market is rewarding them, but they are very well built, good sounding amps. I think we're time for another 7-minute intermission, and then we will continue afterwards. But I need another 7-minute break, so I'll see you guys in a few. back a little bit early again. I didn't think anyone would mind if we do a little bit more questions in this last hour. Let's see. Scott Christ likes the Neo Creams. Yeah, I think a Neo Creams and AC30 handwired would be a good combination. I don't see anything wrong with that in the slightest. Opinion on 98 SVT Ampeg Classic bass head. Yeah, the SVT Classics are really good when they're working. They're really hard to keep working. And the tubes are so expensive. And most people aren't able to run those things that to the magic zone where they sound awesome. You know, you're not John Paul Jones at Madison Square Garden anymore. And a lot of the things that we love about SVTs, you can get other ways these days. And I know it's blasphemy for some. I saw Bonnie Raitt live in concert, and Hutch Hutchison was playing an SVT, and he sounded just so great. But his whole thing is very different from the grittier SVT kind of thing. I think modeling and some of the SansAmp things and the little Aguilar amps these days give a lot of very cost-effective ways to get comparable, almost interchangeable sounds. But for certain players, there is a certain thing an SVT does, but Hutchison on the road with Bonnie Raitt probably tours with 3 heads, and he's got a tech on the road with him to keep him going. And if you're playing at that level for this long, you probably have a stash of 6550s. Retubing one can cost $400 to $600. So I don't know that would be anything I would recommend to anyone unless they were at or above a certain income level. Let's see. Yes, SB, there are phototransistors now. You can do a lot of stuff, but the timing can be a little bit tricky. I do like a lot of the new opto electronics, the things that are in the form factor like an op amp. There's some really amazing stuff that is sold as Claire and sold as Ipswich that I've used a lot that I really like, but they're not easily put into older amps which use larger traditional Vactrols and such. What makes Neil Young's Tweed Deluxe unique? Well, it's being played by Neil Young, number one. And his number one guitar is very weird. And he has his whizzer, which is a bunch of servo fingers that are hooked up, I think via MIDI. He has presets where they literally move the knobs while he's playing. So he's got a very complicated rig with his whizzer circuit. Look that up. So he's basically turning the knobs all the time while he's playing. In certain ways, it gives a lot of control. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that can be different in an old Tweed Deluxe. You can just have, say, the plate and cathode resistor. They're supposed to be 56K. Say that the 56K plate measures 58K, but the 56K cathode actually was drifted down towards 47K. That can give a lot of asymmetrical output distortion that sounds fantastic. It can also drift in such a way that it sounds less than fantastic. It's all subjective, and unless I had Neil's here, I would not know. And unless Neil were playing it, it wouldn't sound like Neil's amp. Let's see. Thanks, RockX, RCKX. Yeah, Dave does great work. In fact, he called me yesterday. I'm picking up 2 10-inch blue Elcos for that 64 AC10 and the old field coil for that 36 Gibson. You can just see right there. You can see it sitting up on the shelf. I've been waiting to get that speaker reconed, so Monday's going to be fun. Dave does such a great job. Hey, Highway Jones, 7189s are essentially beefier EEL 84s that can take higher plate voltage, and they're 14-watt tubes rather than 12-watt tubes. You're going to have the tubes running a little bit cooler. You're going to get slightly less breakup, slightly. You know, the preamp and the phase inverter are going to break up exactly the same. You just going to have a little tiny bit less breakup in the output tubes, and the output tubes are going to be biased slightly cooler as a result, unless you're to change anything else. But 7189s are also more rugged than EEL 84s, so I quite like them. Louis Capuano, I'm sorry that you have two Mark IV amps. If you'd asked me before you bought them, I would have told you before you bought them. Sorry, man. It is really a horrible thing, you know, and like most of you, or many of you, I grew up with all the guitar magazines, you know, long before I could afford a Mesa. I was told through ad after ad after ad that this was just the pinnacle, this was just the best, and all these players were using them. It was just seemed to be the thing. And so when I started doing this and I got the first Mesa in to work on, I was like, what the? Maybe they made one little mistake. And then I got the second amp in and it's like, oh, wow, this is also terrible. And then I get a different model in. Wow, they all seem to be kind of the pits. I think they had a fantastic marketing division, and they saved all the money by not hiring designers, or at least anyone who gave a shit about us. Okay. So you're just asking if you can just have the wire straight from the cable. It's best to do that in a box, just because just like in the shielding video I put up yesterday in that 335, there's only that much wire in a 335 at each pot and at the switch and at the jack that's not shielded, because the braided cable's everywhere else. But it only takes that much of a gap in the shielding for all that noise to come in. So you'd be better off putting a box to plug in and out of your pedal board, so that all the connections are within the shielded component. It will make it a more reliable, quieter thing. But you can do it the way you're describing it. It's just not optimal. Hopefully that's not bad news for you. Hey, Vinicius, the UK-made Vox 15s are really superior to, say, modern. Well, not UK-made. The JMI Vox anything is superior to the current production Vox anything. But like the UK-made Vox AC15 TBX was a piece of shit. The current Asian-made AC15 Custom is better than the Custom Classic, and the Custom Classic was better than the TBX, even though the Custom Classic was made in Vietnam and the TBX was made in the UK. The old AC15 TBX was a UK-made piece of junk, but the old JMIs were better built, though they had some, like all JMIs, they have some heat and vibration considerations you have to take care of. But it's also a very different circuit. They haven't made an AC15, a true AC15, since like 1968. The things made since then have just been 15-watt versions of the AC30, which is not a bad thing at all. Rook, kind of a silly question, but if you had an overwound enough pickup with strong enough magnets and strummed really hard, could you plug directly into a speaker and get sound out of it? Yes, you could. I'm just not sure what the point of it would be. But yes, you'd be inducting current in one coil, which would then be passed to another coil. You could almost just, you could do it, but it's almost theoretical. Let's see. She did not attend Notre Dame. Sorry. I'm too educated. She didn't go to Notre Dame. She just grew up there. Hey, Leo, 335 static from dragging fingers on the pick guard. Yeah, any guitar where you've got static when you rub on plastic, that is static buildup. You go to your laundry room, grab an anti-static dryer sheet, and just wipe down the plastic with it once a week, and it'll go away. That's what they do. There are even guys out there who don't have shielded guitars, but they'll say they have a Tele or a Strat. They'll just put a dryer sheet under the pick guard, then it doesn't build up the static for whatever reason. And if you don't have anti-static dryer sheets, ask if you have any friends who have one and borrow 5 or go buy a box or a couple of bucks. I would advise not getting the ones that smell like baby butt. Get the unscented. But if baby butt's your thing, you're in for a treat. Thanks, Robert McKellar. For those of you who don't know what I mean by baby butt, talcum powder smell, that gross smell. A lot of dryer sheets have bad scents because they think that's garden fresh or something. Oh, drives me nuts. I like unscented. Hey, all for you. Does a 5-watt amp with an 8-ohm output work a smaller speaker to full potential? And does the RMS rating of the speaker matter for a low watt amp? The wattage of the amp matters. The output impedance of the amp does not matter as long as it matches the impedance of the speaker. The RMS rating of the speaker does matter for a low watt amp. The more efficient the speaker is, i.e., the more decibels it lists, given a certain input level, it'll put out X decibels. That's the more sensitive it is. So, say you can have two 65-watt speakers hooked up to a 5-watt amp. The more efficient of the two 65-watt speakers will sound louder, even though they're both just getting 5 watts versus 60 watts out of the amp. You can also say, well, I don't need to have a 65-watt speaker with a 5-watt amp, so I'll get a 15-watt speaker. I'll get a very efficient 15-watt speaker with that 5-watt amp, and then the speaker and the amp will pair up very well with each other. And that would be the way I would generally recommend to clients to start their search. Conversely, there are people who do not want an efficient speaker. They want a speaker with less output that's going to be less efficient, and they'll get more compression and it'll be a little bit darker sounding. All for you. No, a 12-inch speaker always sounds better than an 8-inch speaker. A 12-inch speaker generally is fuller than a 10-inch speaker, whether you like the sound of a 10 or a 12 is personal. It's also going to depend on the enclosure, because one enclosure has enough volume to support a 10-inch speaker, but doesn't have enough to support a 12-inch speaker. It gets deep, but you hear more of what the amplifier is doing with a 10-inch or larger speaker. An 8-inch speaker was always designed for the principle to say, "Oh, Mrs. Johnson, please come to the office." It's an afterthought. The old Fender Champs with 6 and 8-inch speakers, those same speakers at the time were sold to you in the door of a Chevrolet. It was not anything designed for good audio. Hey, Lloyd, I appreciate that. He says he watches and hits like for every video, but rarely comments due to laziness. Are comments important? Will it make we'll make more effort. It helps you out. Excellent channel. Thank you very much, Lloyd. That means a lot to me. I'm not entirely sure how the algorithm works. I know that it starts with the views. So if X number of people view a video, then it's more likely to be suggested to other people. And I know that 500 likes is some threshold. Anything with more than 500 likes gets suggested to even more people. And I'm not sure the degree or if there's a number or percentage of comments that matter. I know that it does matter. So in general, I should say, yes, please comment all the time. And sometimes I will say things in videos just to ensure that I will get lots of comments without clickbaiting. I try not to be manipulative or cynical towards you guys, but there is an algorithm. Basically, as far as I can tell, comments are always appreciated and always help. I think likes and views are the most direct indicators of whether a video is going to do well, and if you like something and you think other people who play guitar would also like it, when you like it, you're saying, hey, everyone else find out about this content. So comments do help. I think likes are the most, or at least the primary, but I'm not sure, because if I spend all my time chasing the algorithm, I won't be able to have any real thoughts in the day. And it's important but boring. I don't know, it's like studying tax law. I very much appreciate you watching and liking. Comment if you feel like it. Let's see. All right. Hulk Hogan. All right. Here's the thing. I see this a lot of times. Someone will buy an amp, and they'll say, "Hey, it was noisy. I sent it back." And the second one was noisy, and I sent it back, and so it's garbage. Amps can be fine and still have this problem because they're amps with tubes in them, and they are shipped to you. And the tubes that most amp companies choose to use are chosen because they're relatively inexpensive, and then they get to you and they've been dropped or whatever. There's no guarantee that the tube in your brand new amp is good after it's been shipped to you. That does not mean the amp is bad. So I see this all the time. People sending the stuff back I feel so bad for the vendor. The vendors need to work on customer education, because if I were to build you a Princeton Reverb and send it to you, I have no control over whether the tubes are good when they get there, even if I mailed the tubes separately. But I don't want you sending the amp back to me. I want to send you another tube and say, try this other tube, or even this other set of tubes. Odds are the amp's fine, but tubes are light bulbs, man. Tubes are glorified heavy-duty light bulbs, but light bulbs nonetheless. They can last 20 years, 2 years, 2 weeks, or 20 minutes. And there's no way of knowing. They die when they die. So I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with your Princeton Reverb reissue with Reverb Static just because a tube is bad. Tubes are outside anyone's control. I have worked on the Studio series, not the Jubilee, is built just like the Studio Vintage. Yeah, all that new line is built exactly the same. I had a Silver Jubilee reissue that had Tin Whiskers, where it came from Marshall, apparently dead, no signal, brand new amp, bought at a local store who was a Marshall dealer. The guy brought it back because like 2 days later it stopped making sound entirely. He wanted to get his money back or get a different amp. And the owner of the store asked if I'd take a look at it because I was faster than going through a Marshall warranty. And I said, yeah. I took some measurements. Hey, the wiper of this pot's at ground no matter where the pot is. Tin whisker, can of compressed air. Gone. Amp came back to life. Not that all. I'm not a huge fan of those studio lines anyway, but that's the kind of thing that can happen. And just because you have a tin whisker doesn't mean you need to send the amp back. With compressed air. If you have a noisy tube, it's not a bad amp. You change the tube. People need to get better at diagnosis, and that requires a sales force to be trained, and that's unlikely to happen. Especially since the good brick and mortar stores are being driven out of the market by all the big box stores. Hey, Brian Sullivan, you got a Subway rocket, it's dropping volume. You sprayed the effect slip check, no change. There's so many things that can go wrong in a Boogie Subway rocket. I believe that model's got a whole bunch of Vectrols, like we were discussing earlier. Any of those can be fading out. I'm sorry that you have a Subway rocket and that it's acting like a Boogie, but I can't diagnose it remotely more than that, other than nothing that you say there surprises me. There you go, man. I'm glad you're enjoying your new tube amp. And yeah, the master volume, you can turn it down. If you need it quieter than that thing goes, like I said earlier, just get some headphones and a modeler. Hey, artists, I appreciate that. Artist Kunanan. I've answered that in a lot of streams, and it's not out of impatience that I'm going to ask you respectfully if you find that. I'm just trying to get to people's questions that haven't been asked before. I do appreciate you watching, and thank you very much. Let's see. I do like the sound of the black line SVTs. I like the blue line SVTs too. They're just, there's a big cost of ownership. Hey, Otto, you want a JTM type amp, master volume, 1x12, center return. Low power, home play, and friends gigs. Okay. The two companies I'd send you to immediately, if I don't know your price range, Friedman and Metro amps, Metropolis and Friedman. If you didn't need master and a loop, I'd say include Germino in that. And there's some used top hats that would make you happy too. But I think Friedman and Metropolis would be great places to start. Blackline SVTs aren't necessary. I don't like to view amps as investments, Louis. If it does what you need it to do, and you can afford it, and you can afford the cost of ownership with maintenance and tubes as necessary, they sound really nice. But for most places, you may not be hearing all that it could do. I think they're kind of outdated in certain ways. It's not a good cost proposition, but they're so wonderful. I love that they exist in the world. Jeff Mansfield, I don't know that I won't take your amp. I just if you sent me some emails, I'll look for them, Jeff. I'm sorry, I'm always playing catch up. Hey, David, I'm not familiar with the V4B reissue, and I don't think I've ever had the Orange AD200. I'm not a fan of the pots that Orange uses, but as I don't have immediate direct response, experience with either of them, I can't say beyond that. Hey, Gut Bucket, I appreciate that. I am not familiar with tungsten tweeds, but I'm not the only opinion out there to look up. Now, do as much research as possible. Look at pictures, play them. If you like the sound, go for it. Hey, Americon. Um, I bet Mark was using a lot of old Marshalls, so you're on the path there. I don't keep up with all the pedals on the market, so I can't steer you towards a certain one or away from other ones. But I think you're on the right path there. But you just play as many of them as possible before you buy something, and those 3 amps that you listed there, you may not need a pedal at all as long as you use the master volume. Actually, I think this. I don't think the Sir Ombre has a master volume, so beware of that. But the little sister and the Runt 20 do. At least the Runt 20 does. I think the little sister does as well. Seth B, you got lucky with the little shielding cans. They haven't done that in a long time. I don't know the Fenders. I mean, Gibson's ever done that on the 335. Let's see. Yeah, 6 pods and bass pods. Yeah, it's. I remember when the first pods and the first Pod X. Every time that a new one came out, the Pod comes out. Man, you won't need all those amps. This is the best thing ever. And the Pod XT comes out. Yeah. The last one wasn't that great, but we got it this time. We promised. Now they got. And then something else comes out after the XT. Yeah, we're getting better. I'm sorry about all the things that were wrong with the last one. But this time it's perfect. And that was 20 years ago. And they keep getting perfecter and perfecter. I had a Pod, and I had a Pod XT Pro, and I had the UX2, and it's not. I could get some usable sounds out of it for practice and stuff, but yeah, man, one of the worst things in the world was in the Pod and the Pod XT Pro and the UX2. Their deluxe reverb preset. Man, that thing was wimpy and nothing. Let's see. Michael Scott Beatus, sorry. Sounds right, but if you go to Hammond's guitar amp circuit page, they have their transformers listed by typical things that they could build. They've got one for an AC-15, and they've got one for Marshall 1974X, and those would be the ones to look at. Very slight variations. But they have them basically saying this: if you bring this amp, this is the one you want. Hey Otto, go watch the RevStar video, the first one. I tell you exactly what that transformer is for. Yo B, glad you slept in for once. I have I have no control over what commercials or ads you are shown on these, but has anyone gotten ads during the stream? There should be an ad at the beginning of the stream and possibly at the end, but I've told it not to do midstream ads. So if anyone is seeing ads in the middle of this, let me know. I've told it no ads in the middle, and I have. If you do get an ad, I have no control about what it is. Brian, I don't have one to sell. This is one that came back in because the owner was concerned that one of the channels wasn't sounding quite right, and it turns out he had forgotten the trick on how to use the tight switch, which was only there on that channel designed to dial out some low end for highest gain stuff, but on the clean stuff it affected the lower mids too much. And anyway, the amp is fine, but I'm keeping it here for a few days. So we're going to do another Tele pickup shootout with it because it sounds so good. And playing this for the past couple of days makes me want to get off my butt and really get the faceplates made so I can get these out to people, because they, it's almost mean for me to say this, but it sounds really fucking good. It has like no noise floor, and it's really versatile, and it's really loud for 15 watts, and I want one myself. And it's not nice of me to say I have made a fantastic amp that you cannot have. So I'm going to try to get it so you guys can actually have one if you want. So I hope to have another one to sell soon. People are saying no ads, so that's good. Oh, good. There's a new Ted Woodford. Hey, Woodford released on a Saturday. Huh. I know I'll be watching after this. James F., I can't recommend pickups in general terms. I'd have to know what you're looking for. The guy who loves AC/DC is not going to be looking for the same thing as the guy who loves Megadeth. Though I don't think the guy who loves Megadeth still watches my channel. Yes, you should all hit like and watch the numbers go up. Liking really does help. Apparently 500 is a once you hit 500 likes on a video, it actually starts to show everyone in the world who does similar, who watches similar content, your video. It's how people find out about these things. So the hand-wired is, overfiltered, not as much as matchless are, but overfiltered. I had a video on the hand-wired the other day where I showed that a bit. I've seen pictures of the new one, but I have not seen one. So if I get one in, I'll have more to say on that. But every 5 years they say, hey, we got a new limited edition hand-wired, and this time we figured it out. We've cracked the code. We finally know all the secrets. Those secrets have been well known for 60 plus years. There are no secrets in old JMI. It's like Gibson. Oh, this time we got the neck angle correct. Well, last time we got the neck angle correct, but we still had the wrong glue. Oh, we finally got the neck angle correct. We have the right glue, but we decided to bring back the long tenon. Oh, this year we kept the long tenon and the high glue, but we decided to mess up the neck angle, and the pickup rings are too high. Maybe next year you can pay extra $5,000 and we'll fix those two mistakes. I get. I think justifiably jaundiced about these things. Thank you all for you appreciate that. Oh wow, Brad, an 18th birthday party, better than an 8th birthday party. I can't imagine you, unless they needed a cheap clown. I'm kidding. You are an unusually expensive clown. Sorry, Vinicius, I didn't know you were a tax lawyer. Well, then, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Vinny, when you get off work, I'm sure you're looking to do other things such as this. Dewey, I don't know, but I would imagine tubes are very likely. Hey, Zuzomatic, what was the last bass guitar you played? This is a very not so great Squier Precision with a Fralin pickup and good pots and knobs and jack and a US bridge, which makes this actually a pretty nice bass. It's a little bit neck heavy and it's not as resonant as P basses I've had in the past. and I can't play without a strap. It's sliding around in my lap. But this is my bass. I use it for testing, bass amps. Though maybe around Christmas or afterwards, I think I might reward myself with a real Fender Jazz or maybe a Sire. Certain things about the Sires aesthetically I find unpleasing. Let me put this back up. It's too heavy for my back right now. Let's see here. Sorry to hear that, Brad. Yeah, I've not found any current production tubes without any failures, but you don't have to mod the amp to use an attenuator. The speaker cables in the C2, the combo, have quick connects on the speakers, and then they just go into the cabinet. But if you want to use it with an attenuator, just unplug the quick connects from the speaker and make a new cable, either soldered to the speaker or probably better with quick connects with a 1/4-inch termination. Plug that into your attenuating box and then run from the external out on the back of the amp to the attenuator. So it's not really a mod so much as you just have to have one more. You have to have a 1/4-inch to quick connect cable made, and just disconnect the quick connects as necessary when you want to use it. So not a full mod, a little bit of a additional setup. Let's see. Better pricing on tubes. Well, it gets tricky, especially as the supply is still not where it was 3-4 years ago. So the cost per tube is still high because there are fewer tubes on the market, but the same number of people wanting them. So Tube Depot has got pretty good prices, but notice that there are limits on how many they will sell per customer per order. So if someone can't buy all their stock and resell them at a markup. There are companies that give discounts or special accounts to people who do this commercially like I do. But that's not really a viable option for most others. I really think that the Tube Store and Tube Depot and Magic Parts and Eurotubes are still remain the best options. Hopefully tubes will become less expensive again in the next year or two. He got a Bogner Alchemist. Is the Alchemist the thing that they did with Line 6? If so, it was not great, but I've worked on an Alchemist, but I don't recall. I have a vague notion of it. Thanks, Hulk Hoagie. Appreciate you. Yeah, if especially if the static thing started suddenly, it's most likely a preamp tube, and it's going to probably be V3. I enjoy doing these Q&As, and I think that it's good for me as well as you guys, because I get a real sense of satisfaction out of this. Not because there's so many of you, though it constantly surprises how many people are here. And it's not about the ego. It's a sense that what I'm doing actually matters to people. I'm not just shouting into the void. And now we're back to Camus and Sartre. How many other guitar amp channels out there discuss Camus and Sartre? Sartre. Are 100 watt amps impractical for 99% of players today? Yes, but 80% of players today kind of want one. Let's see here. Are you going to Japan on Wednesday? All right, I'll have to talk to your ass before you go. Jeff Mansfield, I apologize. I don't mean to ghost you. I have just been so swamped. If you want someone else, there are lots of people out there. I don't mean to be mean. I'm not rejecting you. I've been so busy. I apologize. I really need another me to handle just the email side of things, but I don't have time to weed through the ones that are real, and no one but me can weed through the stuff or reply. All right, good. Yeah, I have no gambling and no religious organizations. There are a few other categories I'd like to eliminate as well. Daniel Ramirez has got a 5E3 clone. Can't really use it in band because it's pretty loud. It's optimal. So use a Princeton. It's the same wattage as a Princeton reissue. You don't have to turn a 5E3 up to be distorted. You can. It has a beautiful clean as well. But a 5E3 and a Princeton reissue are both 12, 15 watt amps. I guess the 5E3 about the same, really. It just kind of depends on the efficiency of the speaker. Just because it can get loud and distorted doesn't mean you have to run it that way. If it's beautiful, I wouldn't automatically sell it unless you just find yourself preferring the Princeton, or you just never end up using it. Hey Seth, let's keep politics off all of this. Everyone, politics off in general, but yeah, it's going to be a long slug this fall as far as the ads. Hey, Jimmy John, Seiko SSK 003, one of the new GMTs. I've just got it on a Tropic instead of the Jubilee. Let's see. Fletch is 40. I apologize. I really won't have time to look at a schematic. I can't be everyone's tech all the time. I don't mean to be mean. These live streams are as close as I can come to that. Is it really? Load is different. Some loads are safer than others. Some loads are built well. Some loads are built poorly. I have no experience with the 2-note Torpedo Capture X. I've heard good things about it, and it's going to depend on how long you are, how long and loud you're running the amp. Any attenuator, if you're cranking the amp because you then can, you'll have shorter tube life because you're going to be running the tubes hotter than you otherwise would because you would have been deaf before that. But horses for courses. There's always a trade-off, but a good load, I think the Torpedo probably is, while it will shorten tube life because running an amp without an attenuator that cranked would also shorten tube life. Yeah, it's safe. It's just things don't last forever. Hey, Joe McGraw. Hey, James F. I don't know if I can. I've had Antiquities, and I thought they were really good. I've had some boutique things that cost more that didn't sound as good as the Seymour Duncan Antiquity. I've had boutique things that are similar price but sound better than the Antiquity. But again, what's better? I think the Antiquity and the Seth Lever are particularly good sounding pickups that just happen to be kind of boutique-esque from a major manufacturer at a price which is pretty comparable to the standard production stuff. And, at the end of the day, for some players, there's nothing wrong with a Seymour Duncan 59 and a Jazz combo. They are very popular for reasons. And it's really hard to try every pickup out there because, installing pickups and changing strings and all that is, first of all, it's difficult to do. Not everyone's qualified to do it. And it's really hard to do a direct comparison because, by the time you change pickups, it's an hour later. Do you really remember what they sounded or felt like before, or are you going off your senses? And I'll tell you what, if you spend $75 for new speaker and if you spend $75 on one pair of pickups, you spend $300 on the next pair of pickups, you're almost guaranteed to hear that the $300 pickups are better. Are they? Or are you just trying to justify the money you spent? Well, it's a game that we all play. We get to a certain point in your playing, and I'm not saying I'm there, but say Jeff McElrain, I don't know if he's still here, but he was here earlier. He's a really good player, and he's been playing a really long time, and he plays the really good amps, and he knows them. He knows his guitars, he knows his amps, he knows the way not only that they sound, but the way that they react at stage volumes. And so if you gave Jeff McElrain a set of Duncan 59 and a Jazz, or a set of Antiquities, he would sound great. But he may be able to say, well, yeah, that I sounded good, but I didn't get that feedback with emphasis on the third that I'm used to getting from, say, I know he's got sorry, I'm spacing his name, and he's such a nice guy. He's a former client of mine too. The pickup guy. Someone help me out in the current stuff. I'm floundering. I know him. Ron Ellis. I mean, I've got him in my freaking phone, and I couldn't think of his name here because I'm on the spot. So yeah, if he's used to dealing with Ron Ellis, and he knows that, hey, this thing, he can control the overtone. That's a subtlety that not all of us get to, or our technique is not there that we can reliably get that. And a pickup can either help that or hinder that. It doesn't magically cause that. But with anything in life, there's a point of diminishing returns. And so I would say between a Squier pickup and a Fender, a standard Fender reissue pickup, a big leap from the Squier to the Fender standard reissue Strat pickup. And then from the Strat pickup to a Duncan Antiquity is a little bit. And then say you go to Freyland's. And then you say you go to Ron Ellis. And so the difference from here to here can be $500. The difference from here to here can be $70. But this is the first really important thing. And whether you go from here to here, or just here to here, or just stay here, that's going to depend on what your needs are and what guitars you play and the subtleties. Like the guys who aren't ever working their volumes and tones and aren't ever, they're just using a pedal for the distortion sound into a clean amp, they may not hear or need to have these distinctions. They may just say, this puts out a signal and then I run it into this pedal. And that works for a lot of people. I do cry sometimes at night when I think of Greenie being used to play Metallica. But such is life. See, we're coming up to the end of the third hour, so if I could ask everyone to stop asking questions, I'm going to try to catch any last bits that I can. I'm going to wrap this up. I stayed closer to keeping up with the chat this time, I think. Thanks, Americon. Thanks, Digital Sucks. Appreciate it. Valdi, a 5e3 can sound horrible at high gain because it is a cathodiene phase inverter that was never designed by Leo Fender to be played dirty, and yet we play it dirty. So you're saying unmusical distortion to someone else, that's their ideal tone. I would have to hear your amp to know whether something is wrong with it, or that's what 5e3s do when you play it at high volume. You may need to take it to someone with more experience with actual 5e3s. It may be doing exactly what it was designed to do, in which case on my channel there are a couple of videos on 5e3s showing some ways to address that. And coming soon, I'll be starting the build for the 5e3 giveaway that we're going to do on the channel. And I will be making some changes to keep it from being unpleasant at high gain settings while still retaining the character we all love. So you might want to watch those when those come up. Hey, Jeff, I appreciate that. Email me again, and I will find it. I'll call you, and we'll get this going forward, and we'll both be feeling good about things. Okay, good. We're almost there. Almost to the end. Sorry about the radio silence while I read, but hey, man, I'm glad to help, and you will never miss that Hot Rod Deluxe. And while the Suhr Ombre is not a very versatile amp in a lot of ways, it is such a good amp for the things that it does. And it's versatile, more versatile than people might think. I really do like that amp a lot. But you get that amp, and then you were to get maybe an AC15 or Deluxe Reverb to pair with it, you'd have three different little flavors of wonderful, and you'd never regret also having the Ombre. But it's not going to catch on fire like the damn HRD. AC15C1, the quarter inch jack input. Hey Louis, you can use a Cliff, or you can use a Neutrik, and it's a PC pin chrome nose jack. You can find that at tubesandmore.com and their input jacks. It's the mono PC pin chrome nose, and the board footprint is the same on all of them. I read that as Happy ECG Day, Josh, and I don't really want an ECG. All right, I think we're getting down to the very end, and I appreciate you. Go back, you missed one. Me? Hello, Alan. Ha ha. Right here, as I was about to sign off, Alan. Alan. All right. SuperChamp X2 is a mild whirring noise. What could cause that? It is a SuperChamp X2. Could be a tube, if that model has tubes. I can't keep up with all the SuperChamps out there. There's so many things. I don't remember if that's one of the ones with the digital reverb or not. I'd have to have the amp in front of me to tell you. Sorry, Savage 100. I think it's about time to start winding this up, because it has been just a little over 3 hours, and it is a beautiful day, and my back is feeling a little bit better. I can, as you notice, I've been able to stand up and sit down without being blocked from YouTube with my vulgar language. But it is beginning to feel a little bit tight from having sat here for 3 hours. So I'm going to sign off. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. For those of you who observe, have a wonderful Easter tomorrow. For those of you who don't, have a wonderful Sunday tomorrow. For those of you who don't, who are in Australia, have a wonderful Monday tomorrow. See you, everyone. Bye.